Welcome everyone, I'm Dale and this is Cinema Historia. This week we're going back to 1957 for a musical drama film called Loving You, starring Elvis Presley, Elizabeth Scott, Wendell Corey, and introducing Dolores Hart. And this is directed by Hal Kanter. Now where does our story begin this week? Well, it begins with Tex Warner, played by Wendell Corey, and he's a seasoned country western band leader, a little past his prime. And his manager and love interest, which is Glenda Markle, is played by Elizabeth Scott. Now, in the beginning, they're playing at a campaign. They're doing a live show for a candidate, Jim Tallman. Now, during the show, they need a delivery of beer. So they ask a delivery service to bring it over, and that ends up being Deke and his workmate. And Deke is played by Elvis Presley. Well, his workmate explains to Glenda that you should hear Deke perform. He's a great singer. So Glenda jumps at the chance to help out their sagging show and to bring in some local talent. So after playing the show, Glenda sees what kind of a reception they get, especially from the female audience. She convinces him to try to join their act because he's such a talent. She believes that he has some real talent, but he declines. He hasn't had a steady job in over a year, and he doesn't want to lose that job, so they move on. But the next morning, the band's going to leave town, and Deke accepts Glenda's offer after being fired from his employer. So after that, they end up headlining and touring through Texas, and they end up having two more acts with them. One is Susie Jessup, played by Dolores Hart, and a singing trio. Now, Deke's popularity grows quite large, so much so that the group is hired to play at Amarillo Theater on a 4-day run. After the end of the 4-day engagement, Deke's management is offered a one-man show in Freegate, Texas, just outside of Dallas. But unfortunately, the terms of the contract state that Tex has to fire Susan and the trio, which only leaves Deke in the show, the main act. Well, at this point, Deke kind of considers the band part of his family, and he considers Susie the starting point of a love interest. He explains that 11 years ago he was in an orphanage, he never knew his family, and he ran away. So this is the beginning of a new family. So does Deke go solo and become quite popular, but he ends up being alone, or does everyone come back, including the love interest, and it's one big happy family all over again? This movie came out on July 9th nationwide in 1957 and was a box office success. In fact, two of the singles, Teddy Bear and Loving You, was certified platinum by the Recording Industry Association of America. He also had some help, though. The director, Hal Kanter, was also co-writer of the screenplay, and he had some help from his co-stars. Elizabeth Scott, who was a well-known actress from the 1940s and 1950s, came out of retirement to co-star in this movie. And Wendell Corey wanted to work with Elizabeth Scott, again. They played in two movies together previous. In 1947, they played in Desert Fury and I Walk Alone. There were a few firsts in this movie also. This was the first starring role for Elvis Presley. He did a movie the previous year, his first one, 1956, Love Me Tender, but this is the first one as a starring role. Another first was Dolores Hart, who played Susie. This is her first starring role in a feature film. She was discovered by Hal Wallace, the director. He discovered her in a production of Joan of Lorraine at a Loyola University. He gave her a screen test on January 16, 1957, and signed her to a contract for $250 a week. She did her part so well, they asked her to come back to play in another Elvis Presley movie in 1958. She played in King Creole. And what was the other first? Well, that came with Jana Lund, who played Daisy in the movie. She was a girl in the audience that went backstage to steal a kiss. Well, this is Elvis Presley's first on-screen kiss. Probably wasn't his last though. So a little more history and a trivia question coming up next. This week we're going to do a little history on jukeboxes. Now in the movie there's a scene where Elvis is asked to sing a song, so he goes up to a jukebox, puts a coin in, and his hips start flying. But you're looking at a Seeburg jukebox from 1960. Now this is a Q160 model. It plays 45 RPM records. It holds up to 80 records. And it weighs around 360 pounds. Now, Seeburg was considered one of the big four back in its day of the top coin-oriented phonograph companies. The other three were AMI, Wurlitzer, and Rockola. But to give you a brief history on Seeburg, Justus P. Seeburg was born in Sweden in 1871. He moved to the U.S. at the age of 16. He settled in Chicago and worked in the piano industry as a mechanic and supervisor. In 1907, J.P. Seeburg started his own manufacturing company using his own name. The Seeburg Piano Company soon became the premier maker of automatic pianos. Now these automatic pianos had several instruments inside that could sound like a complete band. Seeburg continued with this line of instruments until 1927 when he discontinued the manufacturing of pianos and retooled for making the new coin-operated phonograph. Now Seeburg was one of the first manufacturers of multi-select jukebox with the introduction of the audiophone in 1928. 1949 though was a big year for Seeburg. They engineered a mechanism that could play both sides of 50 records, which became a true 100 select jukebox. In 1950, Seeburg came out with the M100B model, and it was the first jukebox to play 45 RPM records. And another kind of neat note, the M100C model, which came out in 1952, is featured early in the opening sequence of the Happy Days series. And the trivia question this week, was Elvis's real parents ever in one of his movies? Yes, they were, and it was this movie. There's a part in the movie where there's a live telecast of Deke playing, and Gladys and Vernon, who often visited the set, were asked if they wanted to be in the audience of the telecast. Pretty neat. I'd like to dedicate this video to Judy, who's a huge Elvis fan, and I'd like to give a big thank you to her husband for letting me film the jukebox and for pulling his 1959 Ford Thunderbird out of the garage as a backdrop. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope to see you back next week.